Kira sat stiffly in the sleek, sterile conference room, the air thick with the faint scent of burnt coffee and corporate betrayal. Across from her sat Marjorie Thompson, her boss of 15 years, and Denise from Our, both wearing carefully composed expressions of forced sympathy, the kind that said they weren't sorry at all, the kind that said they had rehearsed this moment long before she walked into the room. Kira, after 15 years with TechVantage, we're restructuring your position, Marjorie began, her tone laced with feigned regret. Kira felt her pulse slow, steady, not because she was shocked, but because she had been expecting this, ever since an email thread meant for someone else had landed in her inbox 4 weeks ago. She had known this day was coming. She had watched them plan it, piece by piece, believing she was none the wiser. The company is moving in a new direction, Denise chimed in, sliding a manila folder across the table. Kira didn't move to touch it. She already knew what was inside. A severance package, 2 weeks for every year of service, health coverage for 3 months, and a list of career transition resources they probably copied and pasted from a template. We'd like you to clean out your desk by Friday, Marjorie continued, her confidence growing in the face of Kira's silence. We'll need your key card, company laptop, and phone before you leave. Your team will be notified this afternoon. Your team. The words hit harder than the termination itself. Her team, 6 engineers she had personally recruited and mentored. The same team that had spent nights and weekends perfecting the distributed processing algorithm that now powered TechVantage's flagship product. AccountSphere, accounting software used by nearly half the Fortune 500. Kira folded her hands in her lap, forcing a smile. Of course, she said smoothly, her voice devoid of emotion. Marjorie blinked, clearly thrown by the lack of reaction. No anger, no pleading, no desperate attempts to negotiate her way back in. That's all for now, Marjorie said after a beat of hesitation. Kira rose to her feet, smoothing down her blouse with deliberate precision. She nodded politely and walked to the door, pausing just before stepping out. Thank you, she said simply. Denise's brows knitted in confusion. Marjorie's lips pressed into a thin line. They had no idea. The moment Kira stepped into the hallway, she exhaled slowly, releasing the tension in her shoulders. Her heart should have been pounding. Her mind should have been racing. Instead, a cold calm settled over her. The same eerie calm she had felt the day she saw her name erased from the patent filing. The same calm that had kept her steady when she realized they had stolen her work. Through the glass walls of the executive conference room, she spotted Victor Lawson, the CEO of TechVantage, standing in front of a presentation titled Q3 Revenue Projections. He was gesturing animatedly, no doubt boasting about the algorithm she built, the one he had taken credit for at last year's Tech Summit. He had called her one of our research team members. Not the lead architect, not the inventor, just another disposable cog in the machine. Kira clenched her jaw and turned away, making her way back to her office. She pulled out her personal phone and sent a single text message. It's happening. Friday is my last day. The reply came almost instantly. Perfect timing. Contracts are ready. Dinner tonight to finalize details. Kira smiled, slipping the phone back into her pocket. They thought they were getting rid of her. They had no idea she had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. Kira sat at the dimly lit corner table of Meridian, a restaurant far from TechVantage headquarters, where no wandering eyes or loose lips could interfere. Across from her sat Gregory Sullivan, CEO of Precision Systems, TechVantage's biggest competitor. Unlike her former boss, Victor Lawson, Greg actually understood the value of innovation. And more importantly, he understood the value of Kira. Greg leaned back, swirling his whiskey. They actually did it, he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. I thought they might, but to cut the one person who built their entire foundation, Victor has lost his damn mind. Kira smirked, sipping her water. Victor never understood what I actually created. He saw the marketing potential, the UI, the profits, but the architecture? That was just tech stuff to him. The irony was almost poetic. 3 months ago, Kira had stumbled upon a mistake, a massive oversight that TechVantage hadn't even realized they made. When she checked the company's patent filings, she discovered something shocking. they had never actually secured a patent for her distributed processing algorithm. She had spent weeks perfecting it, fine-tuning its efficiency, making it the powerhouse behind account sphere. And yet, due to either negligence or arrogance, Victor and his legal team had never actually filed the paperwork. At the time, she had asked the legal team about it. Their response had been rehearsed, an empty assurance that it would be handled immediately. But something in their tone had set off alarm bells. So Kira did what TechVantage had failed to do. She filed the patent herself. Not for the original version, the one TechVantage mistakenly assumed they owned, but for a refined version she had been working on in her own time. A version that increased efficiency by 43%. A version they had no legal rights to. And now, that patent belonged exclusively to her. Greg slid a folder across the table, tapping it with 2 fingers. Everything is finalized. As soon as you sign, Precision Systems officially acquires exclusive licensing rights to your patent. The press release goes out Monday morning. And of course, he added, a knowing smirk playing on his lips, you'll be joining us as Chief Innovation Officer. Kira flipped open the folder, scanning the contract, though she had already memorized every line. The terms were better than she could have dreamed. A 7-figure signing bonus, a substantial equity stake, and ongoing royalties from every Precision Systems product using her technology. I assume Victor doesn't know yet. Greg mused, watching her. Kira chuckled. Oh, he will. Bright and early Monday morning. Greg laughed. God, I wish I could see his face when he realizes what's happened. But Kira wasn't just thinking about Victor. Her team. They had been blindsided today, just as she had been. 6 brilliant engineers, loyal to her, not TechVantage, and now left wondering what their future held. They don't deserve to be caught in the fallout, Kira said, closing the folder. Greg nodded, already ahead of her. We have positions for all of them. Senior roles, raises. If they want out, they have a home here. A slow, satisfied smile spread across Kira's face. In one move, she had secured her own future, protected the people who mattered, and stolen the one thing TechVantage couldn't survive without. She picked up the pen and, with a single stroke of ink, sealed Victor Lawson's fate. To new beginnings, Greg toasted, raising his glass. Kira clinked hers against his. To owning what's mine. The next 2 days at TechVantage passed like a slow, surreal dream. Kira moved through the sterile hallways of the company she had given 15 years of her life to. But it no longer felt familiar. The polite nods, the forced smiles, the way conversations hushed when she walked by, it was clear that everyone knew. She could feel Marjorie's satisfaction radiating from across the office. She and Victor Lawson must have been celebrating behind closed doors, convinced that they had played their hand perfectly. But Kira wasn't bitter. She was waiting. Thursday morning, she arrived at her office earlier than usual. She closed the door, powered on her personal laptop, and opened her inbox. A single unread message awaited her. Subject: contracts finalized. We're ready. Greg was efficient. By Monday morning, Precision Systems would make the public announcement. By noon, TechVantage's stock would be in freefall. And by the end of the day, Victor Lawson would finally understand his mistake. She leaned back in her chair, fingers tapping rhythmically against her desk. Today, she would play her role. She spent the morning in meetings, calmly discussing handoffs for projects she would never finish. She smiled at junior developers who fidgeted uncomfortably in her presence, knowing that the company was cutting loose the person who had built their foundation. At lunch, she met with Miguel, her lead engineer, the one person from her team who hadn't hidden his frustration over what was happening. Are you seriously just accepting this? He whispered, eyes darting around the cafeteria. They're treating you like you're disposable. You built everything they're profiting from. Kira merely smiled. Miguel, she said softly, do you trust me? Of course. Then wait. Monday. Miguel stared at her for a long moment before finally nodding. That afternoon, her exit interview was scheduled. She entered conference room B where Denise from HR sat with a clipboard. Her expressions perfectly neutral. Marjorie, of course, was also there. We appreciate your cooperation through this transition. Kira, Denise began, pushing a stack of papers forward. Standard NDA, final severance agreement, Confirmation that any intellectual property developed during your employment remains the property of TechVantage. Kira didn't react. She let them talk, nodding at all the right moments. She signed everything with perfect precision. The picture of professional grace. She did not let them see the amusement curling in her chest. They still didn't realize. Denise glanced over her checklist one final time. And you confirm that you have not removed or retained any proprietary files belonging to TechVantage? Kira met her gaze evenly. I have taken nothing that belongs to this company. It was the absolute truth. The patent was hers. And TechVantage would learn that soon enough. Marjorie exhaled, clearly relieved. Well, Kira, I suppose that's everything. She tilted her head, offering a smug, faux sympathetic smile. Will you be taking some time off before looking for new opportunities? Kira smiled back, the perfect mimicry of warmth. Actually, I already have something lined up. I start Monday. For the first time, Marjorie's mask slipped. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. That was fast. Some things are meant to happen. Kira replied smoothly. Marjorie hesitated, studying her as if trying to read between the lines. But then, with a tight nod, she dismissed the thought. Well, good luck, Marjorie said, standing. I hope everything works out for you. Kira simply smiled, shaking her hand. Then she walked out of the conference room, out of the building, and out of TechVantage's life. For now, Monday morning arrived like a storm on the horizon. Dark and inevitable. At 7:30 a.m. sharp. Kira stepped into the sleek headquarters of Precision Systems. Her new office bathed in the soft glow of morning sunlight. The city skyline stretched out before her. A stark contrast to the chaos she knew was brewing just a few miles away at TechVantage. At 8 a.m., the press release went live. Precision Systems acquires exclusive rights to revolutionary processing algorithm. The announcement echoed through the industry like a gunshot, sending a shockwave through every competitor in the space, including TechVantage. Within minutes, the news flooded through corporate channels, stock markets, and technology blogs. By 8:15 a.m., Kira's phone buzzed, the first of many messages from her former colleagues. Miguel, holy crap, the office is in full meltdown mode. What did you do? Kira only smiled as she typed back. Kira, check your personal email. You'll like what you find. She had sent formal job offers to every key member of her former team at TechVantage, offering them not only higher salaries but also equity stakes in Precision Systems. By 8:30 a.m., Victor Lawson arrived at TechVantage headquarters to find his general counsel and chief financial officer waiting outside his office. Pale-faced and frantic, the emergency executive meeting was called before 9 a.m. And Kira? She was sitting comfortably in her new office, sipping coffee as she watched the fallout unfold in real time. Miguel's next text came at 9:30 a.m. Miguel, the legal team is going insane. They're pulling every contract with your name on it. Victor is losing it in the conference room. Board members are calling in. Investors are panicking. This is bad. Kira smirked. No, this was perfect. At 10:45 a.m., her personal inbox pinged. Sender, Victor Lawson. Subject, urgent, call me. Kira tilted her head, amused, but ignored it. Instead, she forwarded it to Precision Systems' legal team, adding a short note. We expected this. Handle accordingly. By 11 a.m., industry news sites were already tearing TechVantage apart. TechVantage in crisis. Key IP acquired by competitor. CEO under fire. Can TechVantage survive without its core algorithm? The cost of underestimating innovation. How TechVantage lost its competitive edge. Meanwhile, Precision Systems stock was soaring. At 12 p.m., Greg Sullivan, CEO of Precision Systems, walked into her office, holding his phone, a satisfied smirk on his face. They finally cracked, he announced. Kira raised an eyebrow. Victor just called. He's desperate, wants to clear up some misunderstandings and discuss options. She chuckled, shaking her head. Let him stew, she said. We'll negotiate on our terms, not his. Greg grinned. I like the way you think. Chief Innovation Officer. The title still felt surreal. But the power behind it? That felt right. As Greg left her office, Kira turned back to her phone. Scrolling through the TechVantage employee group chat she still had access to. One message from Miguel stood out. Victor just announced an emergency all-hands meeting for 2 p.m. Everyone's bracing for impact. I think they're going to try and spin this. Kira smirked. They could spin all they wanted. By the end of the day, TechVantage wouldn't just be in trouble, they'd be on the brink of collapse. The TechVantage emergency meeting was set for 2 p.m., but the panic had already set in long before then. Kira sat in her new executive chair at Precision Systems. Her eyes locked on her phone screen as the messages poured in. Miguel. It's bad. Like, really bad. The board is turning on Victor. Investors are demanding answers. People are freaking out. She could picture it perfectly. The boardroom, filled with stiff suits and furrowed brows. Victor Lawson sweating under the pressure as his empire crumbled around him. 1:45 p.m. Kira took a sip of her coffee, savoring the moment. Greg Sullivan stepped into her office. Grinning. You'll love this. He tossed a printed email onto her desk. She picked it up. Subject. Urgent, immediate licensing discussion needed. From Victor Lawson. 2. Precision Systems legal team. Kira chuckled, reading the desperate plea for negotiations. We believe there has been a misunderstanding regarding the recent patent acquisition. TechVantage would like to discuss potential licensing arrangements immediately. Greg sat down, watching her reaction. He's in full panic mode. Investors are jumping ship. Analysts are tearing him apart. He knows he's out of options. Kira leaned back, smirking. Good. 1:55 p.m. Back at TechVantage, the executive team gathered in the conference room. Through her inside sources, Kira knew exactly what was happening. Victor, standing at the front, his confidence shaken, desperately trying to salvage control. Marjorie Thompson, head of our, sitting stiffly in her chair, refusing to make eye contact. The woman who had so confidently dismissed Kira days ago now realizing just how big of a mistake she'd made. The legal team flipping through stacks of useless contracts, searching for anything that might give them leverage. And the board members, disgusted, furious, already whispering about replacing Victor. Then, at 2 p.m. sharp, Victor took the floor. We are in control of this situation. He began, his voice just a little too strained, his suit collar tight against his throat. There have been misinterpretations in the press. But I assure you, we are handling it. The room remained silent. No one believed him. Then, the first board member spoke up. Victor, let's cut the corporate nonsense. Is it true that we no longer own the licensing rights to the algorithm? Silence. Victor's jaw clenched. We are, currently in discussions. Another board member cut in. Do we own it or not? More silence. Then, chaos. The room erupted. You're telling us that our entire product is now controlled by a competitor? How the hell did this happen? Didn't we file the patent? Victor stammered. There were complications. The CFO slammed a folder shut, shaking his head. This isn't a complication, Victor. This is a disaster. At 2:10 p.m., the news broke. A new headline flashed across the business world. TechVantage faces crisis after losing core IP to rival firm. By 2:15 p.m., Kira's phone vibrated again. Miguel. Victor just left the meeting. Stormed out. He looked defeated. 2:30 p.m. Kira received another email. From Victor Lawson. Subject. Urgent, please call. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned to Greg. Let them sweat, she said, because TechVantage wasn't just struggling anymore. It was falling apart. By the time Monday morning arrived, TechVantage was in ruins. Kira sat at her sleek new desk at Precision Systems, sipping her coffee as the latest stock reports flashed across her screen. TechVantage, down 27% in a single week. It was happening faster than she expected. Her phone buzzed. Miguel, you need to see this. Emergency board meeting. Victor looks like he's about to pass out. Kira leaned back, smiling. She had been waiting for this moment. The boardroom was dead silent. Victor Lawson sat at the head of the table, his face pale, sweat beading at his temples. Across from him, Richard Donovan, the company's largest investor, sat with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. The other board members were stone-faced, flipping through the financial reports, numbers that spoke for themselves. Major clients leaving, licensing fees to Precision Systems skyrocketing. Stock prices plummeting. Victor cleared his throat, trying to salvage control. We can recover, he said, forcing his usual corporate confidence. We're still a strong competitor in this market. Richard slammed the report onto the table. Don't insult us, Victor. His voice was dangerously low. You lost the core of our entire product. The software that makes us money. And now we have two choices. Pay millions in licensing fees to our biggest competitor. Rebuild from scratch and pray we don't lose every client before it's done. Victor tried to argue. We're already working on a new version. How? Another board member snapped. Your entire engineering team quit. Victor's fingers tightened around the armrests of his chair. We have replacements lined up. The CFO let out a harsh laugh. No, we don't. Everyone knows we're bleeding out. No top talent is going to touch us. And even if they did, it would take us years to fix what Kira built. Victor flinched at her name. And that's when the final blow landed. Richard leaned forward, voice calm but lethal. We spoke with Kira Jennings this morning. Victor's stomach dropped. She refused to negotiate. He froze. What? Richard nodded. Precision Systems has no intention of giving us a deal. The rates they offered are non-negotiable. You know what that means, Victor? Victor swallowed hard. It means, Richard continued, that you cost this company billions. The room was deathly silent. Then, a voice from the other end of the table spoke. I think it's time for a leadership change. The words hung in the air. Victor's blood ran cold. No, he said immediately. I can fix this. But he could already see it, the shifting postures, the exchanged glances, the decision already made before he even walked in. Richard gave a small, almost amused smile. This is not a discussion. Victor. Kira's phone buzzed again. Miguel. Victor just got fired. They forced him out on the spot. She exhaled slowly, savoring the moment. It was over. The man who had mocked her, dismissed her, stolen her work, was finally paying the price. TechVantage had tried to erase her contributions. Now, they were paying for that mistake. And Kira? She was just getting started. The skyline of the city stretched before Kira as she stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office. 1 year ago, she had walked out of TechVantage's headquarters for the last time, dismissed as if she were nothing more than an aging relic. Today, she stood as the Chief Innovation Officer of Precision Systems, the company that had dismantled TechVantage piece by piece. Her phone buzzed. A notification from MarketWatch. Precision Systems surpasses TechVantage in market value for the first time in history. A slow satisfaction settled in her chest. She had done it. TechVantage, once a giant in the industry, was now a crumbling shell of its former self. And Kira Jennings was the woman who had made it happen. The executive team was already seated. Anticipation thick in the air. Gregory Sullivan, the CEO, gave Kira a knowing look. Well, he said, tapping the table lightly, I believe congratulations are in order. There were smirks and murmurs of approval from the board members. TechVantage just finalized their licensing agreement with us. Greg continued, his voice edged with amusement. They'll be paying us a fortune just to keep their software running. The irony was delicious. TechVantage had fired Kira, believing they could erase her contributions. Now, they depended on her technology just to stay afloat. We also received another interesting development this morning, Greg added, sliding a folder toward her. Kira opened it and froze. Her father, Victor Lawson's resignation letter, effective immediately. She exhaled slowly. The man who had mocked her, dismissed her, tried to replace her with younger, cheaper talent. He was gone. Kira leaned back in her chair, fingers tapping lightly against the folder. What's next? She asked. Greg chuckled. Well, I suppose now we officially run this industry. He said, how does it feel? She thought about it for a moment. I thought it would feel like revenge. She admitted, but honestly, it just feels like justice. Because in the end, she hadn't needed to destroy TechVantage. They had done it themselves. And she? She had moved forward, without them.